Welcome to my video on tracking all requests and not losing income. My name is Neil Potter and I work for improving your small business. Basically, this video is about making sure that your company is tracking all the customer requests and not losing income. A common issue that I find in many vendors. So before we get into the solutions and then figure out how to track requests to closure and not lose income, let's look at the problem and a couple of questions. First question is, in your business, how many sales do you believe you lose because customer request was lost? Now, when I'm a customer and I have vendors do work for me, like renovations and yard work and that kind of thing, I would say most times I make a request and they forget, or they lose it, or I make several requests at one time and they do half of the work. They really have no way to track the work to completion, and basically they're losing income, and sometimes a lot of income. And so in your business you may want to ask the question, if you look at all the requests that you either found later or too late, or ones you found you never had actioned at all, now what are they really worth? And typically adds up to be a lot of money. Second one is how much time is spent tracking down requests. When a customer reminds you of a request they made a while back, but you have no record of it anywhere, you have to track it down, figure out who made it, who recorded it, where it was recorded, if any, and then apologize to the customer for that issue. And that is tedious, time wasting, and credibility with the customer goes down. So these are both good questions that I think clarify where the problem actually is. Now, my image here, I don't recommend this. It's just an image from the internet. A Mac with post-it pads on it is not recommended. If you have a system like that right now, we will discuss and we'll recommend a suggestion later on. Let's take a look at some underlying causes behind why the problem occurs when requests are not tracked or they're lost. One is that staff don't recognize a request was made during a conversation. So you meet with a customer, maybe a prospect, they're discussing what they want, and they're pointing out this, this, and this, and this, maybe 15 things, and you're writing down maybe 2 of them. And they actually said, make it blue, or make it square, or deliver it next week, or make it heavy, or make it light, or make it whatever. And that request just got lost altogether. And so there's really no constructive way to capture what they're saying or confirm understanding. So a lot of the requests they're making, the customer thinks they're making the request, but really the request is going nowhere. The recipient, the salesperson, the staff of the company are not really tracking along with all the things being requested. Companies often assume memory will serve them, even though it has never served them before. It is amazing to me when I work with a vendor. I'm actually verbally discussing what I want, and they have no notepad, no device, nothing to record what I'm saying. And I know for sure they're going to focus on the first half and forget the second half. And so to them, they're thinking, memory served me well last time. It didn't actually. They forgot everything. And they don't really repair that for the next time. So I would say if you're relying on memory altogether, that's probably going to be a disaster. I mean, you may be the exceptional person that can remember everything, but probably unlikely. And the other thing is that as you age, we're all aging, I'm sorry about that. Well, as we age, our memory, the short-term memory at least, goes down. And so I think you want a definite way to record what's going on and a way to confirm that with the client. If you actually just have a notepad, just start off with a notepad and then confirm before you leave the customer, didn't you say these 10 things, or what did you clarify with them? That could be just an initial way to make sure we have all the requests they requested actually written down somewhere. And then we'll discuss later what to do with that. This is a very common one too. Too many different systems to record requests, and then some of them never referred to again. The times I have dealt with a vendor and I've texted them a response and they don't look at their texts, or I called up their voicemail and left a voicemail, they never look at that voicemail anymore. Or I go to their web page and I use the contact form and make a request. Either they don't get it, They've never looked at those things ever, or the thing's broken. And so I would say if you have different ways to receive requests, kind of make sure they're going to work. And so look at the ones that you don't use right now and eliminate them or fix them, and then going to decide on the ones you actually do want to use. Make sure they actually work over time. A lot of companies think their web systems work. They think their contact page works, but when I actually use it, I never get a response. And so if you think your system works, you may want to test it regularly. Maybe there's been an upgrade, an OS upgrade or whatever, a change in the system, and no longer actually works. Requests are handed verbally from person A to person B, and then person B to person C. So the customer mentions to the salesperson a request, that's person A. Person A is busy, and they verbally tell person B in the company they're going to handle it, and person B is busy, and they tell person C to go handle it. And by the time person C gets it, the request is totally and utterly messed up. It doesn't even recognize, even look vaguely similar to the initial request. So verbal is a complete disaster too. Maybe there's a few cases where it actually works because people are very conscious or conscientious about it, conscious and conscientious, but typically it's a complete disaster. So you want to look at your company and just figure out some of the underlying causes behind your situation, and you will know what to kind of fix going forward. Now, I'm not a big fan of spending lots of money on this stuff, particularly when the problem and the solution can be very simple. And so I'm going to discuss some ideas, go from very cheap, kind of zero, to a bit more expensive, but not that expensive. I would say the cheapest one I can think of will be to have a common email address where everything goes to. And so the upside is it's cheap and it's organized, one place to kind of filter things to. The downside, you have to have somebody at the other end to organize the list. You're going to get emails and all kinds of stuff that has to be kind of parsed and looked at and organized. So I think it's a good place to start off with. So everybody on the company, if you get a request from anywhere, then you send an email to that address, and then it all goes into one kind of place. That would be one way to do that. Now, a little bit better than that, but still kind of cheap or kind of zero, but a bit fragile too, but it still works, would be kind of have a shared spreadsheet. Now, obviously you know what a spreadsheet is. You could have a spreadsheet set out with these columns here, whatever columns you want, but don't have files and attachments. That's a disaster. I mean, that would never work particularly well. You want to have that spreadsheet kind of shared on a web page, internal web page. And you can go to the example here and take a look. Click on that link. I'll put the link copy down below the video so you can find it. And so the idea here is that you have data in one place, so anybody gets a request, they go to the shared page, they type in the data, and then anybody in the company can see that because they have the link. And you can do this either in Google. So Google has a free Google Sheets that is shareable, and I set up a web page that looks like a spreadsheet. And then if you're using Microsoft, you could go to any spreadsheet, hit the share button, and then create a link, make that visible to the company employees, and then they can kind of put data there too. And so it is a simple way to have a common place to kind of put data. Now the downside is you can overwrite this. So now person A kind of typing here, and they're going to put in their data into row 2 here. They could, if they are error prone, they could overwrite kind of stuff or delete stuff by mistake. So the upside is it's cheap and organized. The downside is it is fragile because you can overwrite stuff very easily. One of the other tools I like is ClickUp. Now ClickUp has a free version out there too, and some paid versions, although the paid is not that expensive. And what I like about it, it has some pre-configured menus and options which you can then quickly kind of set up for your situation to kind of track work or request to closure. And it has an application that kind of runs on a Mac, Windows, and Android and iPhones, and they all connect to one place, the kind of web system. And so it doesn't matter kind of where you are, you can enter data, and then it kind of goes to the system, and you can then send emails to your staff to kind of follow up on things. So I have basically an area here set up on the like a space, a workspace, set up called clients. That was fairly easy to do. and this is a client 1 record here, and then client 2 record. And because I wanted to put some notes in there, you can add custom note fields and links and whatever attachments. And then to kind of track to-dos to closure, maybe there was many things you have to do for that particular client. We have this task list here we added to the record, and even I added a kind of a main task or a outstanding task. So again, you can configure this however you want with any kind of columns you want, and when you configure it the way you want to do it, you can then kind of lock the screen down to be not modifiable until you can unlock it. So after you set up the database, you can share the data with any employee in the company. On their app, they can then modify data and they see things. It tracks changes. It doesn't kind of lose data. You can go back to historical versions of it, and you can then kind of send emails out to people to track things to closure. So actually a very easy and very powerful system. There are paid versions for more than one user. The one I'm playing with here is a free version in ClickUp. Another option is Notion. Notion is a more generic database that's out there, and there's a free version too. It doesn't run on an application, it kind of runs on a web system, so you have to go to the cloud and kind of run it. The upside is it's very extensible. The downside, you have to either modify it yourself, really kind of set it up, or kind of go to one of the many templates out there from one of the user groups, and then pick a template and kind of use it. So it's a bit more legwork to kind of establish, but it's also very powerful, and you can kind of do whatever you like with it over time. Now, I'm not being sponsored by anybody to kind of advertise these. You can do your own search for many tools out there, but these ones are particularly easy to use and have a good following and good examples out there. So what do I do in my company? My company is 2 people, and we actually have separate clients, so we don't have to track requests across clients. So I have my own database. I'm actually using OmniFocus. I have these 6 states our customers go through, which you could then mimic in Notion or ClickUp. Basically, need to set up a meeting. So I have a prospect, and my record is called Client A, and there are details below that for Client A. I then have a first meeting with them. I kind of write down their needs. So Client A would move down here to be kind of tracked. And then I send a proposal. It's kind of where the needs are really kind of codified. They go into step 3. And then I track them down over here. If they're waiting for a schedule, they've actually committed to something, but there's no deadline set for it yet or date. They go into step 4. So Client A would then drag down to item number 4, and then when they become scheduled, they go to number 5. And if they kind of vanished and there was no response, and they kind of whatever, they go to number 6. So I have some of these 6 states, and I can kind of track kind of where things are by dragging that record among the 6 states. Now, if I had more than 2 or 3 people in my company and we were sharing data and requests among the population there, then I would definitely going to then mimic this in ClickUp and then do that accordingly. Now, from a scheduling perspective, I use Excel. It's actually a shared Excel spreadsheet, so I know what days I've sold and what I'm available for. Again, if you use Notion or ClickUp as an example, they have their own built-in calendars, and you can actually see where people are working and when they're allocated to things by a calendar view. So here's an example of ClickUp set up for those 6 states. These are columns. They're more obvious in the application than my screen capture here. But step number 1, set up a first meeting. Step number 2, discuss the needs. And this is the record Client 2 being dragged from left to right. Now, Client 1 ended up at the very end, okay, work in progress. And there are actually some steps after that. Step 7, for example, kind of done. So again, you can set up the ClickUp tool or Notion tool to have these kind of states, and they can drag these things across left to right. And because it's very highly modifiable, you can then change the columns, you can change the content of the particular record, and you can even change the view of the whole thing to go top to bottom versus left to right. Now, what I like about ClickUp too is when your screen gets too busy, you can collapse these columns. So this is a collapsed column name, and these are expanded. So if you get too busy a screen with too much kind of stuff going on, you as a user of the system can then change your orientation and kind of see different data. So again, it's a very flexible kind of system, very much like Notion. So what are the next steps? I think firstly to recognize the degree to which you have a problem. If you have no problem, you're good. Okay, you're very unusual. Okay, most companies I've worked with over the years, particularly vendors to kind of me, are just terrible, just appalling about tracking stuff. Everything's done on post-it pads, verbally, systems that are broken, email addresses that are broken, phone numbers that are broken, and they're going to just live that way day to day, and they're losing all kinds of revenue because of it. So I think firstly recognize what kind of problem you have. Speak to your people that you have in the company about kind of how things are working and whether things are tracked or not tracked. And then I would say try a tool out on a small scale first. If you like spreadsheets, then try a spreadsheet. It's a bit fragile, but it's a good way to kind of figure out what's going on. If you are open to spend a few hours on configuring a tool, I would say ClickUp is a good choice. If you are like an IT-ish kind of background, or you have IT-ish kind of people that like to do that, maybe Notion, either one of those is fine. They work better than the spreadsheet. And then I would say try for a month on a few customers. Maybe put 2 customers in there and see what happens. Now, does it work? How would you arrange the fields? Kind of what data do you need? And then kind of figure it out. If these work, stop, you are done. Then add more data, you're good to go. Okay. If they don't work for some reason, and I'll be surprised if they don't, because they're very flexible about how you set them up, then you could go to something more complicated and more expensive. Do a search on CRM. That is the official name of these kind of tools. I would go look at YouTube. YouTube has everything known to man and womankind out there where people have evaluated these things. I would say don't pick something that causes you financial stress. I'm about making companies more elegant and efficient without spending money, a lot of money. Even the ClickUp and Notion, I think you're maxing out like $100 a year for those things, unless you're like huge. And so the budget for that is like trivial, even for the non-paid, the non-free or paid version scheme. And then whatever you pick, try it on a small scale, and then kind of evaluate. Now, one thing I would do, definitely, whatever you select, is to train all staff. So you want your staff to know how to process a request, so you never lose it. And so if you have a tool of choice you end up using, make sure they know about it, and they know the other options are not valid options. Okay? Or if they have 3 options, they actually go to one place and get processed correctly by somebody in the company. But unless you tell them how to use it, they'll never know, and they'll go back to their post-it pad system that they think is reliable. Also, after maybe a month or every 2 months, do lessons learned. You're not going to set up the tool correctly first time. Nobody ever does. It's not possible. You're going to tweak it and modify it, and you want to make sure the system works elegantly and efficiently and quickly for the people using it. And so they know what issues they have, they know how well it works, where the data is, and how things are set up. Given these tools can be set up any way you want, then you definitely want to elicit from them how it's working, and making sure it's working correctly, and then modify and tweak the system over time. Don't just do one time, and hopefully that will solve it. You have to work on it every couple of months, and make sure it still works correctly for your people. So thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found some of the resources useful. I'll put the links of these tools and things down below so you can see them. I have a newsletter I write. Go to our webpage here and you can subscribe. Okay, that's all you get is a update of the newsletters. There's actually several articles out there already, and so please subscribe to that. Should you need help, I'm a service, so I actually do respond to requests. And so go to the services page, see what I do. Either email me, I do respond, or go to the contact page, I do look at it, okay, and I respond. Or call me up, or send me an email, whatever you like, and I will get back with you. Okay. If I don't get back with you, some nasty piece of software consumed or ate the request. Okay. So try another mechanism that actually also works. Okay. And whatever it is, spam, junk, or whatever, we'll figure it out. But if I get a request, okay, the systems I'm promoting here have been tested, okay, and I should get it, and it should be just fine. And you will always get a response from me from a request. Even if you post a comment in the video down below, you'll get a response too. Guaranteed, all the time. Okay. So any questions, comments, suggestions, anything you want to say or discuss, just go to these two areas here, and I'll get back with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.